Humanity does not have any borders. And David proved this by setting an example for others, by his community work, and by helping refugees around the world. Like many others, I'm one of those who, inspired by his humanitarian work, and joined BMG. I'm your host, Mia Sumer, and today I have a great pleasure to have Mr. David Bonds with me. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Hello, Mr. David Bonds. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, good evening, no matter what part of the world we're in. I'm doing great, and it's a pleasure to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you for giving us time. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Mr. David, would you like telling us more about bonds management?
Sure, it would be a pleasure because it's a group of like-hearted individuals, very skilled professionals, both from the sectors that they have experience in their consulting world. But I think what speaks to me most about the Barnes Management Group is that we believe in shared leadership, that we come together as people who share similar values, and we have a goal of engaging with community to build capacity to support organizations to do that work. We don't come in as the expert. They're the expert in their organizations, but we come in to walk alongside them and really truly make a difference. When there's a project that they require outside assistance, we're there to join with them, and we're the bridge to the resources that may help them reach their goals. And so more and more, that's what Barnes Management Group really believes in, is community capacity building, organizational and community capacity building.
That's wonderful to know. Would you like sharing the idea, the story behind BMG? Why did you started BMG?
Well, thank you for that. It's a very it's probably important to be able to articulate where did this all start, and it really started, I think, from our belief, or my belief, that we can't do this work alone, that we've got to work together to build partnerships, to recruit and to attract people who share the values that we have, and also bring the skills that we may not necessarily possess ourselves, because together we can make a difference. And I think that's where it all started. So when I would look at some of the work that needed to be done in our communities through my own experience around working for many years in organizations, I really felt that in order to work effectively with other government or community agencies or corporations, whatever they may be, we needed to figure out first where their pressure points were, and then who would it take to help create the environment where change can occur. Change is not easy, and I think my belief was that if we could attract people to work together, that we could make a difference. And so BMG sort of came out of those roots of around finding the right people who wanted to work together, who felt a common bond to the mission that we had created. And yeah, that's where it all started, and it's been evolving ever since.
That's great to know. So teamwork is the best strategy to win.
Mhm.
Right. So moving forward, David, myself and many of our viewers, they are also interested to know about your background. As far as I know, you have a rich background of social services, but we would like to know more about yourself.
Okay, well, thank you for that question. It makes me reflect back on how do we become who we are today. And I think for me, I've not spent a lot of time thinking about this, but I did grow up in a family in the country, in a farming community where you really did need to work hard in order to build a life for yourself and for the family. And it was a very community-oriented family. And I think as I went through my own training and went to university and focused on social work, it came out of the values, I think, that were instilled in community life and how communities work together to make a difference. And so when I went to university, I did my placements in different areas. One was in hospital and one was in child welfare. I ended up then finding child welfare was where my heart was at that time. And I think for a number of reasons, it was community or a sector that I felt really drew me in because I felt that there was tremendous need to support not only the children that were struggling through circumstances that were far beyond their control, but also to understand parents and understand how do we support families in order to protect and support children. It's not one or the other, it's both. And so it got me going into that way of thinking. And one thing I remember very clearly, and this is also maybe a thread back to where BMG started, was when I was a young social worker, I was assigned to work as a protection worker. I always felt totally inadequate going into those families to do what I was supposed to be able to do as now a trained social worker with a master's degree. I felt that I was not the expert. I could bring skills, I could bring something to that work, but I needed to do it in partnership. So there were very few families I ever worked with that I worked alone. I would bring in other public health, I would bring in other professionals that would work alongside of me and work with the families side by side with them. Not telling the family what to do, but how do we work together? And I think that always stayed with me, that if we are going to be effective, that had to be where it came from. And that was the partnership that was established. And so I spent 25 years inside of that sector working and supporting the work that was needed, either as a frontline worker or later on in more direct roles. And from there, it led me into supportive housing, working with homelessness. And again, there were many commonalities between the sectors, people who were vulnerable, people who are suffering, and how do we as a society figure out strategies and ways to support them. Looking back now, I would do lots of things differently, and that will get us into other conversations about BMG, but I think at the time, we all collectively did our best, and we worked with government and the organizations around us to provide the services that were required. So that was my roots. Started off in farming, country, university, child welfare. Spent many years there in different parts of Ontario, and then moved into the work that we currently do. And yeah.
That's very interesting. And as you have mentioned, it was quite a journey, 25 years, and then you have started BMG. So would you like to mention some of those major projects which you can recall and which you like to share with us?
Yes, it was the projects, they were both major and small, but they were all important to what we wanted to do. No matter what the size of the project was or is today, we take it very serious that there is a need for us to join with those organizations to move forward. So the small project can be incredibly rewarding because we can partner and we can bring resources that may not be available to them otherwise to make a difference in their community. And then on a larger sense as well, where I felt that we could really make an impact is how do we not only to go in and do the work that's needed for the project, but then how can we follow it up with capacity building? How can we support the work that we began? And I'm thinking of a couple of projects where that really played out. I was very fortunate to be able to do a study of child welfare funding for remote Northern First Nations communities. And it was a journey that I was never prepared for or understood until I got into it. And I spent a summer traveling to the North, listening to people, going into communities that were remote, and listening deeply to understand what their needs were and how does the funding that they were receiving put them at a pretty significant disadvantage to the rest of society. You know, we bring our own worldview to this work, and then when we get into these organizations, these communities, we realize that it's not an equal playing field. And so that had a profound impact on me, not only to complete that work, but also then to be able to, years later actually, be asked by the Human Rights Commission to go back in and update those studies, update the material, because the government was seriously looking at how they could substantially change how those communities were funded and the services that they required. It also led me to think that in my practice, we were so isolated and so siloed around the work that we do, If I think child welfare has protection workers and family service staff and some prevention programs, but it doesn't meet the holistic needs of families. And that was never more clear than when I was in the North and looking at everything from housing issues to children sleeping on floors on mattresses that were mold infested. And my mind kept going, what difference will it make to have more protection workers in this community? They need different services in these communities. They need a more holistic approach to services. So that was a project that really significantly changed how I viewed the world. First, the work that we might be able to do to support First Nations communities. Again, we're not the expert. We don't have the solutions, but together we can probably find ways to move forward. If we think we have a solution to a complex problem, it's probably not the right one. If it was that easy, it would have been solved. So instead, I think we come in and we try to explore and ask those curious questions and figure out what might be the way forward. And we won't get it right the first time, but we'll keep working on it. So I have many projects like that at the BMG, and it's not just my project. These are our collective associates who bring this talent and this commitment and the ability to work together have made the difference. Recently, we were involved in a significant recruitment initiative to support autism in the province of Ontario. And it was exciting because it was the first time that we worked on this scale, and we felt so empowered to support communities, to identify people who were committed to working in the field of autism and families that required those services. So we created some very interesting electronic job fairs, for example, to identify people out there who met the qualifications of this work. So that was really exciting, and really appreciated the trust and the opportunity that was given to us to do this work in partnership with those organizations. And certainly I hope in the end, the work that those organizations are doing will have a tremendous impact on the services that families receive who require those services.
Right. So as I have learned from this conversation that you have been everywhere, you worked in different sectors, you are like an all-rounder to me. Yeah. So I would like to ask you, what do you enjoy most at work? Is it being as a management consultant or more towards the humanitarian side? What do you enjoy most at work?
I think what I enjoy most, and certainly now, is to understand the strength that we bring to our work. There's people around me who are very detailed, very expert in doing specific tasks that are needed in our consulting projects. But I think what I really enjoy is the feeling that I can work as a networker, as an influencer, to help people see the world slightly different. And can we bring together the right people to make a difference? So when I think about a problem and I think about the partnerships that we need to create, what gives me passion is to be able to explore that. It's almost like swinging the door wide open and taking risks and seeing what's possible, because we never know. Sometimes something looks like it's not going to work, and yet we'll never know by not trying. And I've always believed that what we do is we set a vision for the future, and that being in strategic planning, it can be in BMG, and we never quite get the vision that we had imagined, but we work towards it, and we allow ourselves to change according to the needs of the community, the society that we live in. So what gives me passion and interest and excitement is just being able to be part of those conversations. When you meet people that are like-hearted, but think differently, because when we come together, you got to bring in all aspects of this work. For me, what really excites me is just the diversity of thought and learning from other cultures, other societies, and taking that knowledge and really thinking, wow, I never thought of that. But when we expose ourselves to different views and different ways of thinking in different cultures, we really start to appreciate the richness that's out there, and it's endless, and the opportunities are endless when we open up to that. So that's what gives me passion, is to keep thinking, what's next? What can we do next? And where do we need to move our resources and our skills?
That's amazing. So learning never ends.
It never ends.
Never ends. We talk about past projects, we talk about present projects, about BMGs. No, I would like to know about future plans of BMG. So would you like to share some information about that?
Yes, it's an area that really gives me a lot of energy and a lot of excitement. If we think about the consulting side and the work that we do in organizations, in partnership with government, partnerships with organizations, I think we pride ourselves on the ability to bring together the right people to do the work that's required. And we are the bridge between resources, between government and communities that they're there to serve. And how do we do that in a respectful way? Not everybody's going to agree, but can we hold the space in the middle where we can have the conversations that are critical to moving forward the agenda that community might have or government may have? Something came out of the pandemic that really started to change our focus. And at that time, we were all alerted to some of the gaps in our society, some of our healthcare services. And I'm particularly thinking of long-term care and the impact that has had on society. And I guess as all of us age, we start thinking about what does that mean for me? And so through that, I was so blessed to have incredible skilled people around our team to really go deep into the long-term care world, not only the past, the present, but what could the future look like? And one thing that came out of that that has been really exciting for me, and we're only just beginning this journey, is we created a nonprofit that's powered by BMG, and it's called Rethink, and it's how do we influence government policy, public policy, from the bottom up. So we're not a bunch of folks that come together who have incredible skills in academia and then try to write the papers that will then influence government think. What we believe in, and we need those academics, but where we start is at the bottom. Can we elevate the voices of people with lived experience and not just have conversations, thank them very much, and then move on? How do we engage them in the conversation? Because I heard one young person told me one time, we are more than our stories. It's lovely that you want to hear about us, talk to us about what we've experienced, but we are more than that. And I think what we've been able to do through the leadership of our consultants and our relationships with some universities around graduate students, we're truly trying to understand what it means to engage communities in elevating the voices of those that we're there to serve, no matter what sector it is. It could be long-term care, it could be in many sectors. We've always given lip service to consultation, do stakeholder engagement, but we want to go far deeper than that. How do we truly listen, take the ideas, because after all, they are the experts in their lives, in their communities, and how do we take that information and then truly work with our partners, being organizations in the community or government, to take that further and operationalize it to make it work for communities. So for me, the excitement now with BMG is certainly operationalizing projects under Rethink, long-term care being one of them, and it's really to create community vision around what care can look like. And then that has also led to other initiatives that are really, for me, very powerful and passionate and drives me. And that is looking at how do we build caring communities. And I think as we cross between these projects, what we talked about in the North, what we talk about in long-term care, it's really about building human connections. And I recently had a conversation with one of our grad students and think, we have these various projects that you might be assigned to, and they're great, you're excited by them. But when we step back, they all are learning from each other. They all have the same common element around building caring communities with a human connection. And that is so clear when it comes to what we're doing around building caring communities, around supporting the integration of newcomers to our society, not just to help a newcomer settle and find their spot in our society, but how do we actually build the human connection between folks that have been here for a while, who call themselves Canadian, who are part of our society, and our newcomers who will eventually be Canadian citizens. And how do we start building those links? And so that gives me incredible satisfaction to see that happening. And we've been so fortunate this year to be able to bring on board in that project a newcomer that's been in the country now for a couple of months, who is just providing amazing leadership to elevate the voices of people with lived experience. And by having our friend and newcomer join us in this process, this journey, it not only allows him to help us understand what his experiences are like, but it's part of storytelling. It's really bringing together the emotions that are so important for all of us to understand, because this is an emotional journey as well as understanding the story. And I think if we can be successful, it will be because we allow people to connect on a human level. Because when we connect with somebody on that level, no matter if it's a stranger that we just met, it will make a difference going forward. And that's the whole goal of building caring communities. How do we do that? And I think we've got the people around us who are so committed to that type of work.
That's amazing. What an incredible journey as BMG, and then present projects and exciting future plans. And there is a lot to learn from you, but due to our limitation of time also, we are not able to continue. Viewers, as you have learned together, I also learned together with you that BMG is not just a traditional management consultancy firm, it's beyond that. David, I would like to ask you if you give message to the world, anything you want to share?
Well, I think I'll try to keep it brief, but it's really that we are more than the sum of our parts, that together we can make a difference. And if we are open to hearing different points of view, different worldviews, can we come together? To me, that's how we're going to impact and build capacity in our communities, in our services, in our government, how they respond to the needs. So for me, it's coming together, creating a community, talking, sharing openly and transparently, and then taking that information, bringing together the skilled people to make a difference. So that's my excitement, is that if we're open to that, I think we can truly make a difference in society.
Thank you so much. This is from Mr. David Bonds from BMG, Bonds Management Group. And we are going to finish our video here, and stay tuned for more videos with project specific details. And bye for now.